Hello my friends, today we're going to be talking about the Legend of Zelda, specifically the music of Zelda and how some of the songs are influenced by black culture. Now of course, the Legend of Zelda series is a fantasy story which takes most of its influences from European and Asian culture, but many longtime Zelda fans by now will probably have noticed that the Zelda series uses influences from a number of other different cultures of the world as well. And by the way, if you're a Zelda fan and you like learning about culture, then you should subscribe to this channel and ring the bell as well. Alright, let's get into it. First I'm going to start with the songs that I'm fairly certain about, and then I'm going to move on to what I'm going to call the maybe category. Let's begin with the Woodfall Temple of Majora's Mask. Why start with Majora's Mask? Because it's my favorite game. Anyway, the Woodfall Temple. What an awesome place that one is. Now, when you listen to the vocals of that particular song, those vocals are African. How do I know this? The proof is right in the sample itself. You see, Koji Kondo used various samples to make a lot of his music back in the day. And this particular sample literally has the word African in the title. So let's listen to the relevant part of the song now. And now let's hear the African sample. Next up, we're going to be looking at the classic Ocarina of Time, and specifically the Forest Temple. Now this too also has African vocals in it, and additionally it has an African whistle as well. Let's listen to it now. And now let's listen to the original African sample. Now I'm not entirely certain, but from what I've heard of African music, I believe that the last two tracks that we heard were both from the Central African peoples known as Pygmies. Now unfortunately I don't think I can show you an example of Pygmy music on this video because I'm pretty sure that kind of stuff tends to get copyright claimed. But you don't have to take my word for it. Look up on YouTube Baka music or Mbuti music and you'll see what I'm getting at. But don't leave yet because we still got other Zelda music to talk about, including the Shadow Temple, which also has a sample which literally has African in its title just like the other two. Now here's the original drums for comparison. Now, since the boss of the Shadow Temple is Bongo Bongo, I'm inclined to believe that this drum is a bongo, which actually would be an Afro-Cuban instrument instead of just an African instrument. But of course, said Afro-Cuban instrument is derivative of an African drum. But yeah, my ears aren't exactly trained to tell whether this is a bongo or some other drum. I'm not exactly a music expert. If you're new here, just letting you know, I mostly research visual arts and culture. So music is not my expertise, but I wanted to do this video anyway, because there's proof in literally that the samples have the words African in them. Although having said all that, there's not actually a sample used in this next song that we're going to be listening to, which is the Spirit Temple, which I believe is Egyptian inspired. Why? Well, I don't need to really be a music expert on this one, because I can just point, like I did in a previous video, to the fact that the Spirit Temple has an enemy called Anubis, an Egyptian god. Let's take a listen, shall we? Now we still have some more songs to get into, but before we do, there's something I want to talk about. Now, a lot of people seem to just lump together North Africa and the Middle East. They just think it's one contiguous culture. It is not, alright? Just letting you know, it's not. But a lot of people have this opinion. Heck, the other day I had to explain to a friend of mine that Berbers are not Arabs. They just aren't. People don't get this. And it's really unfortunate that there's so much ignorance about this stuff. But yeah, the Middle East, first of all, we shouldn't even be calling it the Middle East or the Near East. We should be calling it West Asia, because it is Western Asia. But yes, I do understand, obviously, that the Middle East is very unique among Asian cultures, but it's still Western Asia, so let's just call it what it is, you know? And if you don't know, the reason why I insist on calling it Western Asia, even though I pretty much have to call it the Middle East because that's the term people know it as, is because the Middle East and the Near East are very Eurocentric terms. So that's why I think it's better to call it Western Asia. Anyway, the reason I brought that up is because the people working at Nintendo, like a lot of other people in the world, probably in their minds just lump the Middle East and North Africa all together into one. So keeping that in mind, we can probably safely assume that the Gerudo, for example, are inspired by both North African cultures and Middle Eastern cultures. And therefore, it's not always clear when a video game is referencing either the Middle East or Africa. I can personally tell if they're referencing each individual cultures based on visuals, but because I'm not a music expert, I cannot, hear a lot of the differences between North African music and Western Asian music. And to be fair, because Islam moved into North Africa many hundreds of years ago, over 1,000 years ago, that makes it so that there is, of course, a lot of cultural exchange. So even in the visual arts, there is some trade, there's some exchange, but there's probably even more so in the music department. But I don't really know. Again, not a music guy. But the reason I can identify the Spirit Temple as specifically having Egyptian influences is because of that whole Anubis thing, They got the god Anubis as a character in the Spirit Temple. And since we're talking about Western Asia, let's listen to some Middle Eastern inspired Zelda music. That's some great music, and there's plenty more tracks like that in Zelda games as well, but let's get back on track and talk more about Black-influenced Zelda music. So these last songs are on the maybe category. I'm definitely not certain like I was with the other songs that we discussed before. With these songs, I'm just getting a vibe of them being African, you know what I mean? So first up, we have the Goron Village song. Now, why do I think there is some African influence here? Well, I'm pretty sure the African instrument known as the udu is used in the Goron song. Take a listen. Last but certainly not least, let's listen to the badass drums played in Dark Beast Ganon's theme. Is it definitely African? I don't know. It might be Middle Eastern inspired. Either way, it's a really cool way to end the video.